Hey, this is Mike. I'm responding to Dawahfilms, and I guess more importantly, having a general discussion about the freedom of speech. Um, for the most part, I think in these last couple of videos that have dealt with Dawahfilms responding to Anti-Boo, I seem to be more on the side of Dawahfilms. I don't think Ali has to apologize for the actions of terrorists, and furthermore, I found Anti-Boo incredibly, unforgivably ignorant when it came to the issue of moderates. There are tons of moderates, atheist former Muslims and secular Muslims, who are constantly, well, actually made careers out of criticizing fundamentalist Islam. So he's going to get his own video, don't worry about that. But again, like I said, I think Ali was right for the most part, but I think he got two issues horribly wrong. Disastrously wrong. So, those two issues are, I believe, free speech and the motives of Al-Qaeda. So let's cover free speech first.
I think that freedom of speech means unlimited speech, and that's not the case. Our society does not work that way. Western society does not work that way. I'm sorry, everyone. Like I said, there are such things as personal property. There is such thing as slander and libel. Those aren't protected under freedom of speech. And even in many areas in the Western world, hate speech is not protected under freedom of speech. So I'm sorry.
Society doesn't work that way? Says who? Who says exactly what hate speech even is? These are the important issues, Ali. Because I've certainly met people and have dealt with people who would classify nearly anything that offends them as being hate speech. I was involved years ago with a debate on abortion. I was up against the president of the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. This is a group that has boards, these trailers that they put around the city of Calgary with pictures of aborted fetuses. And they'll come into universities as well and put up these massive Bristol board pieces, basically to intimidate and terrify people. Now, I was scheduled to debate that person, the leader of this organization in Canada. And I was told I wasn't allowed to debate, and he was told he wasn't allowed to debate, because the very idea of having a debate on the issue of abortion was considered hate speech. So in whose hands is it to make that distinction? Personally, I don't trust anyone other than myself to make that distinction for me. I'm allowed to decide what is hateful, and I will ignore it or fight against it. That's my freedom of speech. But when you insinuate that society just doesn't work that way, that's putting the issue of deciding what is good and bad speech into the hands of someone else other than yourself. And that I find deplorable.
When certain people out there like to criticize religious views, they will do something purely offensive, and they will call this criticism. And to me, this is not freedom of speech. This is actually a mockery of freedom of speech. See, freedom of speech is constructive, meaning that it's for the sake of letting ideas thrive. It's for the sake of letting people obtain knowledge. It's for the sake of letting criticism thrive. Real, rational discourse. When somebody draws a picture of a religious figure with bombs strapped to him, or puts Jesus, the crucifixion of Jesus, in a jar of urine on display, there really is no other motive behind it simply for the fact that you want to be a jerk.
Ali, I think here you're presenting a false dichotomy. You're saying either one, someone is giving me a rational response, or two, they're offending me. Now, we both know, and don't even try to respond to this point, we both know that religions will be offended no matter what kind of response you give them. So I don't accept this idea that when artists make these works, like Mapplethorpe's Urine Christ or the South Park cartoons, that they're not doing anything constructive. They absolutely are doing something constructive. They're allowing the issue to be brought forward. They're allowing it to be criticized. They're saying they are offending you, but they're allowing at least that discourse to take place by offending you. Because if you're offended by a cartoon, how are you going to react when someone says that the Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile? Or that it's not true that Islam is a religion of peace, that there are parts of it that are extremely bloodthirsty and violent? How are Christians going to respond to the idea that the resurrection simply never happened, and that all of the arguments for it are complete bunk? They're not going to respond to that rather well. So by offending you, by pushing the boundaries, by allowing you to have that emotional response, by putting it into the public sphere, it allows engagement to take place. It allows that rational discourse that you want and you think is good to take place. That's why we actually need people like the South Park creators. Why we need even people like Mapplethorpe who make incredibly offensive pieces of art, because that is what art is supposed to do. It is supposed to shock you. It is supposed to get you into different lines of thinking. And if that's uncomfortable for you, too bad. Don't watch it. Don't look at it. But don't take away other people's rights to listen or to be heard.
You know, drawing a picture of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ with a bomb on his head is only an indication of hatred. It's only to incite a negative response. That is all it is for. It doesn't say, oh, I am criticizing fanatics and we should stop this and try to help the world. No, it's basically saying, this is what Islam is, or this is what a particular religion is.
Again, Ali, my response has to be, so what? So what if someone draws it in a picture versus says it out loud? In either case, you can respond to that. You can make a reply. If someone says to you that Islam is terrorism versus writing it into a picture or making a painting or drawing it on the sidewalk or making a kabuki play about it, I don't see the difference here. And I think it's important that we have these different ways of communicating our beliefs. Not everything has to take place in the form of structural dialogue or YouTube videos. In fact, actually, now that I think of it, YouTube videos are a different form of communication. Normally, people would discuss these things in newspaper columns and then later blogs, and now we see video blogs. So there are different forms of communication. I can make my point this way. I could have made a cartoon, well, not a very good cartoon, but there are different modes of expression, all towards the same end. And I know that the reason why people are offended by these cartoons has nothing to do with what they're portraying. It's because of this rule about not drawing the prophet. But those are your rules, Ali. Those don't apply to us.
Draw, or you offend a religious figure, or you try to make this depiction where the followers of a particular ideology or religion are of a certain way, kind of like if I were to, I don't know, have a cartoon about an atheist and all the atheists look like Stalin. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't go over very well. When you do this, you really are just disrespecting the people. You're not really disrespecting the idea. And as a believer in these ideologies, we have a right to be offended, and we also have a right to try to boycott it and take it down. And that is real freedom of speech.
No, Ali, that is absolutely not what freedom of speech is. You have the right to be offended. You have the right, furthermore, to express that offense and to argue with someone. But you do not have the right to boycott and take things down, other people's works and other people's ideas, and furthermore impact the right of everyone else to engage in that dialogue and to express themselves. That's the difference.